that I think many of our customers have had success with doing, kind of fundamental to what we would recommend, is start with a particular challenge. Start with a particular problem that the business has that they haven't been able to maybe solve or address or answer, right? I'll give you an example. So Guess jeans, Guess clothing, right? The Guess brand name, I think it's relatively well known. Pretty big fashion label, right? They had a problem in their retail stores, and they were effectively trying to increase their sales. That was the CEO's challenge. They needed to increase their sales, and they were looking for any help in doing that. So one of the things that the IT team brought to the table was, look, we can help you analyze what people are doing in the stores and help understand how and why they're purchasing and why they may not be purchasing. So they did something maybe similar to what you were doing in the back in terms of they analyzed they set up some sensors and trackers using their video cameras in the stores. And they basically followed all the customers around the stores using their video cameras, right? And then they analyzed that data and understood the traffic flows. And they figured out that if people went into a dressing room to try something on, they were 50% more likely to purchase something. So instead of increasing advertising spend, which was many people's first inclination, or open up new stores, which is very expensive, capitally intensive, all they had to do was get their store clerks to push people into dressing rooms. Hand them clothing, go try it on, right? And it actually worked, right? So they actually increased sales quite markedly by doing that. And it was really just a relatively simple solution in terms of getting people into the dressing room, right? It seems kind of simple to think about, but it was the IT group that really brought technologies to bear and helped them solve that problem. So from there, then they started looking, okay, how can we use analytics to increase other capabilities that we have and decrease costs, right? Okay. What about you at the table here? I'm sorry, say again. Is there a mic?
So our challenge is to implement this, like the data manipulation is very limited in this PA. So our leaders or the business users will prefer, again, this Excel reporting and all the steps.
They prefer Excel and yeah. And Excel, the biggest BI tool in the world. Right? Yeah.
That's the biggest challenge.
So their challenge is how do you get them outside of Excel? Okay, all right. Well, that's actually, so the Decision Point product is actually made to do that because it provides a lot of the same end results, but it's made to be more drag and drop interface, right? It's actually kind of interesting to see executives that are good at pivot point and things like that, but I think that's just because of necessity, right? The challenge that I have really in using those tools is they're not as flexible, right? You can't look at it in many different ways. So that's one of the capabilities that we provide is to visualize it differently, right? Because looking at it in a spreadsheet without a graphical visualization of the information, a lot of the results don't kind of jump off the page, right? So that's kind of what we've done with Toad Decision Point is you kind of make a pivot point, but you make it visual, and it really helps you see things differently, right? So I think the idea is to have the tables talk amongst yourselves in little groups, right? Is that what we're going to do, Annika? Okay. So why don't we try to share some stories around the table and maybe share some best practices and talk about what each of you are challenged with, and I think us from Dell will maybe be bouncing around to help you talk through the conversation. And maybe we need to pour drinks in order to lubricate the audience. I'm not sure. So. Okay. Annika, do you want to? Are we going to go around the tables now? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
So look to your right and say hi.
Started building